Good evening, everyone. Welcome to season five, episode number four of the P.W.P Sessions podcast. I'm your host, Noelle Figueroa. Thank you for tuning into this episode. With me is another poet, an awesome poet by the name of Susan Michele Coronel, and she's joining me today to converse about everything that's happening with her poetry, what's currently happening, and what's coming up. Susan, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me on your show.
Awesome. Glad to have this conversation. Well, first and foremost, who is Susan Michele Coronel? How would you describe yourself or define yourself?
I guess when I think about myself, I think that I have many different identities, but the main identities I would say are woman, New Yorker, Jewish American, mother, friend, writer, actor, and someone that I think I'm someone who just likes to learn more about the world and learn more about others. And I think poetry for me, is a way for me to do that, to explore the world and make sense of the world, like through my imagination and by shaping things that happen in life.
Excellent, excellent. Now every poet has their own, definitive beginning as to how they got started. What got you started into poetry?
Well, I remember when I was little, was a little kid, my mom used to she was a teacher, so she used to bring home books from school and like she'd have like these simple poetry books like Langston Hughes and Christina Rossetti and like I just was like very curious about them and I was amazed how like the poets could express so much in like just a few words and it just really grabbed my attention. And I always enjoyed creative writing in school. And I remember when I was in, I think it was fourth or fifth grade, the teacher wanted us to write a simile about fall. And I wrote sweaters say so long to summer. And she thought that was so great and put it
Hmm.
on the bulletin board. But it just gave me gave me a boost as a writer. And my first grade teacher was like saying, oh, you should be a writer when you grow up. And all those seeds were like planted early on.
Excellent, excellent. Now, when you first started writing poetry, what were those first subjects about?
Well, I think when I actually, like, 'cause I did creative writing, but as far as poetry, I did more of that, like, starting in college. And I remember writing a poem about a photograph I saw, which took place in Washington Square Park in the 1960s. And I was just kind of fascinated by the 1960s at that age. And I remember writing a poem from the point of view of one of the women in the picture. And just, yeah, I would just kind of write about my experiences and write about like some artwork that motivated me.
Hmm. Excellent, excellent. Now, as you develop your skills as a writer, who or what would you say helped you to develop your skills as a writer?
Yeah, I mean, well, definitely the early encouragement that I mentioned early on. So it's, I used to be a fourth grade teacher. So like I always took that to heart that like whatever you tell kids, like they're going to remember it. So if you tell them like, wow, you have potential or this is a great piece of writing, like that will actually stay with them and it stayed with me. And as I got older, yeah, I took a class in high school and I got very interested in poetry because I started to read contemporary poetry, not just like, old school poetry, but like stuff that was very contemporary. I'm like, wow, you could do that in poetry. And that kind of fascinated me. And yeah, in college, I had heard the poet Yusef Komunyakaa read and decided to enroll in his class and uh, made made a really good friend from that period of time. And yeah, the friend was encouraging as well, and the poetry and Yusef Komunyakaa was very instrumental in me just having the idea of like even considering myself a poet. Like think I could actually be a poet. Like I never would have conceived that before.
Right, right. Now, what motivates you to write poetry? Is there like one thing or a few things? Like what keeps you driven to write poetry?
Yeah, I would say just like some things that are just weighing on my mind or like my ideas or things that are weighing on my mind and things that happen and always feel like this need to shape it or express it. Like even I don't know, even when I'm just outside taking a walk, or if I go to a gathering and people saying some strange things, I'm just always thinking like, oh, how would that be as a poem, as a play, as a skit? Like, how do I shape all this? So I guess shaping things. I mean, with my book, it was more about like processing the past and things that happened in childhood in my life and losses, family losses, divorce, and separation from my children. So there was like a lot of stuff that I was carrying, and I was able to release that through the writing.
Hmm.
And so now I kind of write about a mixture of different things, but with the book, like those poems were very much more or less about that, or just accepting myself as a writer, like because I kind of was out of writing for a long time, and then went back into it after my kids got older. Um, at the beginning of my divorce, I started writing again, and yeah, just kind of lifting myself up and saying, I could do this, and just hearing a lot of other writers and their stories and their work, like also inspired me to write myself.
Hmm. Right, right. Well,
It
well,
still inspires me. When I love
right,
hearing like I like reading poetry too, but like both of them are really helpful. Like reading poetry and also hearing poetry read aloud, which is sometimes like totally different experience. Like
right.
yeah. So, but I like both experiences. They're both important.
Right, definitely. I can agree with that. Sometimes I like being the listener, and then other times I like to read. I like the combination of the two because it helps me personally as a writer and a poet. Ha I think it's important to have moments where you just take it all in. That way, it helps you when you feel it helps you. So that way, when you feel compelled to write, you're able to have a nice creative flow because you had a chance for yourself to find inspiration more or
Yeah.
less.
So I find that's really important, like reading or listening to poetry. Like without doing that, it's like I run out of ideas fast. But just hearing something, or you're just reading a line, it just will trigger a memory or trigger an idea.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Definitely, definitely. Well, definitely congratulations to you on your debut book of poetry. Let's talk about let's dive into it for a few minutes because the title itself is very intriguing and interesting. In the needle, a woman. Can you share with us what was the inspiration for that title and the process and what was the process like for you of putting the book together?
Sure. So yeah, so when I did write a poem that had that title in it, but I never thought that I would be using that as the title of the book. And one of my mentors, she read the book, and she was giving me feedback on it, and she had suggested that I use that as a title, and I was like, hmm. And it kind of intrigued me, and it kind of made sense, like in a way, because like in the needle, it's like you're going through a narrow place. If you're using a needle, if you're a piece of thread going through a needle, it's like it's a narrow place, and it also connected, in my mind, it was connected with sewing, which is like kind of like putting yourself back together, putting your life together, creating something new with like different strands, different threads. So I guess I kind of realized I was going to keep that title. And as far as the book itself, it took a couple of years. Like a lot of the poems in it were written like between 2020 and 2023. But I was sending it out and revising it and having different poet friends look at it and poet mentors look at it to give me suggestions or ways to improve it. And yeah, and then finally got accepted at the end of 2024 after many revisions and the order. I kept changing the order of the pieces too, but trying to find connections from poem to poem as much as possible.
Mhm. Excellent, excellent. And did you work with a publisher for this project, or would you consider or would you consider this project to be self-published?
This was accepted by Finishing Line Press, which is a really a press that's very friendly to new authors. There's so many authors I've met, maybe that have had multiple books out, and they said, "Oh yeah, my first book was with Finishing Line Press." They have
Mm.
a lot of books, so I feel like that was a great opportunity. And then I had submitted the book to a contest, and I was jumping up and down when I found that I had won the contest
Oh,
after
awesome.
sending out manuscripts for like over 4 years.
Excellent, excellent. Do you personally have a preference between self-publishing and working with a publisher, or is it just a matter of it depending on the type of project? Like, where do you stand with that?
Well, I mean, I see that there are some writers that they self-publish and they've had amazing results because they're just like their social media is really active and they have a lot of followers. They're performing at a lot of events, and people get to know their work and they buy it. So that way, even if they self-publish it.
Mhm.
But yeah, I guess for the first book, I wanted to see if I can get published by a press for the first time, and yeah, it's been a good experience, and especially learning like marketing and trying to connect with other writers and do readings with them, and it's just been a journey. It's been really exciting, like just getting out of my shell, getting out from behind the page, and connecting with people.
Right, right. And what was that feeling like for you when the book was finally finished? You opened up that box of that delivery and you saw firsthand, those first copies of your book that you were able to hold in your hand. What was that feeling like for you?
No, it was really exciting. I mean, because I had, imagine having a book out, but it took a couple years for it to become a reality. But yeah, it was good to be able to reach that point.
Right, right, right.
But
Excellent. And what was the first reactions to your project? Like what was some of the comments you received regarding your book?
you mean right before it was published or after it was published?
Like when it was finished and
Oh,
you started like with your book sales, it was finally done and you started selling your book. Like what was the first reactions to it?
yeah. I mean, just people were congratulating me. People, friends and family and other writers that I knew. Some writers that knew that I had been working on the book, and they also had been working on their book. And so it was kind of like, well, one of the writers, I she had her book published like a few weeks after mine, so it was kind of exciting because we both were working on poems together and giving each other feedback, I should say, on each other's poems. So it was kind of like, just other people that knew I was working on it. Like they were just glad that I finally finished it, and I was glad that it was finally here. And I was happy with the cover. The cover was designed by a poet and artist named Megan Merchant, and she actually put some words from the poem on the dress of the woman on the cover, and it just really came together. Um, the the book and what I was trying to communicate with the book.
Right, right. Now, is there any one subject that you like writing about more than others, or is it just a matter of you just write according to whatever inspires you at the moment?
Well, with this particular book, it was definitely, as I mentioned, like very, very based in my life and relationships and people in childhood, and based on that some of my children appear in the poem, and relatives and family, and people that I've known, loved ones that have passed. And there are also some poems in the book that are ekphrastic poems, so they were inspired by paintings or photographs, and so I like those are kind of two different processes almost. Like one is very autobiographical, almost like memoir in verse, and then the some of the ekphrastic stuff or the more surreal stuff, it's kind of like just letting my imagination run free and not trying to have any particular outcome, and kind of letting the words write themselves, which is kind of a totally different experience.
Right, right. What poets would you say inspire you? Like, are there any ones that stand out to you in particular?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of poets. There's so many. Like, I'm amazed, like how many great poets there are out there, like contemporary poets and also, poets from earlier. But yeah, I definitely always admire like Emily Dickinson and Langston Hughes just for like the economy of language. And I've also admired kind of the beat poets like Lawrence Ferlinghetti and Allen Ginsberg and Anne Waldman, and yeah, other poets like Lucille Clifton, and who else? Some contemporary poets like Terrence Hayes, and January, Gil O'Neill, and there's many, so many.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. Um, if you could collaborate with a poet, living or deceased, who would it be and why?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know if they would say yes, but um, no, I would say it might be someone that does spoken word and performance, because that's something I'm kind of leaning toward that now, and like just the idea of working with someone that's able to transform their words into kind of a performance like Anne Waldman or Patricia Smith, that would be mind-blowing.
Awesome, awesome. Well, at this time, I wanna give some time for you to share your poetry. So, if you like, you can share up to five poems. You don't have to do five, but you'll have time to do five poems of your choice, to give our audience an idea of your poetry, and of your writing style. So, at this time, the floor is yours.
Okay, thanks. I'm going to start off with a poem that takes place in childhood, and it describes what we used to do when we used to not have cell phones on Saturdays or Fridays or usually the weekend. It's called Dreamland. We lift hands in the air, disco lights blinking as we do the downtown and spread eagle, fluorescent orange and purple wheels gliding on the miracle maple floor. Every Saturday afternoon, we're transported to a Dayglow nightclub for 13-year-olds, gulping down hot dogs, root beer, and day-old pizza. Time to roller boogie to Grandmaster Flash and Blondie's Rapture, shake it on down with older teens in mesh tops. All week long, we yearn to push it with our booties and toe stops, coming out of our suburban reverie. This is the way to jam on it, step right up, enter heaven's gate before another one bites the dust. What do we know about tainted love? Only the deep, infectious grooves of synthesized beats, a glossy Playboy in Dad's hamper every week. This is how we do it. We lip sync, we spin, skate backwards, and ease on down. Wiping out isn't an option. We learn to relax while we're walking on sunshine, let the music play until the sun goes down or we get our ride. When it's time to kick up our wheels, remove skates on an island of benches, hike rainbow socks over knees and thighs. For now, we leave it behind, wait for another lookout weekend to practice learning how to fly. I'm going to read a poem about my younger daughter, and it's all about trying to pass on traditions and your children's resistance to doing that. Younger daughter resists tradition. She tells me one day, I don't want to take Yiddish classes anymore. In Fiddler on the Roof, the youngest daughter insists on leaving the fold because of true love. But to her father, she's a splinter in a cantaloupe, untethered from tradition and from every family who's ever said, stay, follow, without doing it themselves. True love. A violin shivers naked, trills on a hill, attempting to play a familiar tune. But the music escapes through holes in pockets, beguiles even those with the best intentions, singing, look what you've done. Loss is a bone caught in the throat, a sewing needle threaded not once, but in both directions. The only Jewish tradition left for my daughter is food, matzo ball soup, chocolate coins, bagel with cream cheese. What she does not know is that I am trying to keep my balance on a roof whose shingles dangle like warped leaves. There are no prayers of devotion, but reams of remorse, the repeated desecration of our culture through history, confirming that we still sit on rotten hands. I care little for the temple, rituals opening like a can of preserved peaches, but yearn for the parsley sprig, for the Star of David to be twisted and reimagined, so my children will not lose what came before, without knowing what they're losing, even as I know it's already lost forever. Love is sweet, but better with abyssal salt, a kiss on the punum. Thieves and the dead I've loved knew darkness like a tattered coat. Children always refuse, but it's still better to ask them to carry something than to come to the table of the future empty-handed. And I have three more. This one is a short poem called A Girl's Life. A girl's life is about dancing as an amenable animal, leaving her crown in ghost spaces where she once lived, but is no longer connected. Her pelvis is an envelope that gallops in the rain. Not a catastrophe, this cave of unbelonging. Better to yowl about sowing and dawning. Invite the genesis of authentic pink breath, not death with its vulgar mock orange. On a clear night, her ankles lift past former beloveds, abandoned in the olive of her mind. No clutter, no violence, but the aching boat of ambiguity, a slip of speech in the quiet dark. where a mouth is still forming what it wants. This next poem is also kind of reminiscing about motherhood. I have grown children now, and it's just looking back. So this poem is called To My Thirties. To my thirties. I did not swallow your sand or soil when time pimpled days with feathers, or succumb to the weighty rush that wends days into weeks, weeks into years. You offer the promise of more, the heft of ribcage and radish amid the changeability of water. I donned you as the second skin of youth, turning pages of picture books, rocking babies with the ease of song. You sandwiched me between the turbulent 20s and faithless 40s with the language of cotton and napping. I savored sweet childhood dollops and new friendships, how you matched me with other families with children, connections made as easily as breathing. We tugged on lawns and blankets, hugging and yawning, taking photos, riding the wind. Now my bones no longer grow and muscles ache, the path ahead sliced at sharper angles. Sometimes I miss you, look for wild horses in a land that's no longer wild. You gave me the fullness of family before it dissolved like a sugar cube in tea. To my thirties and the brocade of birth, flashes of nipples sought and sweet fingers received in mouth, grasping adult hands. And this, I think we're up to number five. The last poem I'm going to read is about my late brother, and it's called The Year My Mother Turns Back Time. The year my mother turns back time is also the year my brother turns into ashes, scatters like pollen into an invisible sea, carried by trees and wind and leaves. My mother jerks her head backwards to shake a grief that refuses to be shaken off, and time reverses kaleidoscopically. My brother is 16 again, strengthening his biceps, flexing them to lift the TV remote off the wheelchair armrest. And the girl with the mulberry eyes is smiling at him, rolling a lifesaver candy in the folds of her tongue. He marvels at her titanium hair. Then he's 9, running to first base on a softball field. And instead of constantly falling, he's standing upright. The fat in his calves is miraculously shrinking, plump legs easing into lanky sticks, not stilts or spears or crutches. And suddenly he's 6, and we're both gasping for air in a fort under our parents' quilts, where we listen to Casey Kasem's Top 40 Countdown. The hits from coast to coast. We pretend we're lost and in love, opening the edge of the covers to catch our breath. I force him to tell me his favorite song under threat of tickle torture. Time shifts again like a wobbly chair, and he's a toddler, riotously laughing as I make silly faces and twirl scarves around his playpen. Not mulberry bush, but tangle of brambles and wire. Then in a flash, he's in his crib, throwing toys like river stones, drops of milk staining his bib as he relaxes into the arms of his baby nurse, and he's swimming in a dark corner, not cave, sinkhole, or lagoon of my mother's womb, twisting to the sound of throbbing blood. The amniotic fluid around his newly formed brain might be tapped, but my mother chooses at the last minute not to do an amniocentesis, even after warnings from her aunts, whose sons succumbed to the disease. Superstitions and salt are spraying from the family tree. Water blossoms spiral around his scoliotic spine and mutated strands of DNA, until at last the squeaky mattress, where our parents' bodies are beating with new life. Thank you so much.
Wow, wow, that's amazing poetry. Thank you so much for sharing that. That was beautiful. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. That was excellent. Now, I'm sure at some point, or or on several occasions, you've heard the word, representation thrown around in different circles, for one reason or another. As far as your poetry is concerned, how important is it to you that you make sure that you're representing yourself in your totality, through your poetry? When you're speaking, when you're dealing with things such as, your upbringing, your education, your womanhood, your spirituality, if that applies to you,
Mhm.
all the things that make you who you are. How important is it to you that you're representing yourself in your totality through your poetry?
Yeah, I think it is very important that what I'm communicating is authentic, but transformed in some way. Uh, but represent, definitely the poems, like I read the poems in this collection and they definitely truly represented like my emotional state or my emotional state about the events. And then I look back on it, I'm like, oh, well, I've kind of changed in the last couple of years. Maybe my poems are a little different, but I think the same underlying authenticity and like desire to like communicate is still there.
Excellent, excellent. And when all is said and done, what would you hope to accomplish through your work?
I mean, I hope that I can communicate to others, people that have had maybe most of us or many of us have had difficult, experiences in our life totality, and just giving people hope that they can communicate something important to them or something that's hurt them, and they can transform it through poetry.
Right, excellent, excellent. Are there any other projects or events coming up that you would like to mention to the audience?
Yeah, as far I'm going to be reading at a poetry series in Lower Manhattan called One on One, and on April 19th. And April 18th, I'm doing my first it's the first panel that I got accepted to a poetry festival up in New Hampshire called the
Oh,
Yosrat Nassini Festival. I hope I'm saying the name correctly. It's a little hard
excellent.
to pronounce.
Hmm.
But yeah, so I'm excited about doing that. And I'm going to be on the panel with two other writers, and I reached out to the writers myself to get their input, and I like that we're working together as a team to like talk about our work and how it's like how it represents us and transforms us.
All right, excellent, excellent. Well, congratulations again on your project In the Needle, a Woman. For those that are interested in purchasing a copy, where can they find it?
You can get it through my website, which is www.susanmichellecoronel.com. And yeah, the my email address is susan@susanmichellecoronel.com.
Mhm.
So if people are interested, I could do a personalized copy and also autograph it
All right,
directly.
awesome. Awesome. And for those that are not already connected to you or those that are not familiar with you, where can you be found on social media?
Well, on Instagram, at Susan Michelle 7. It's Michelle with one L. And Facebook is Susan Michelle Coronel. But I think I have an author page and I have a personal page, but most of my stuff is on my personal page.
Right. Excellent, excellent. Well, Susan, I want to thank you so much for being a guest on this episode of the PWP Sessions podcast. I enjoyed the conversation and I certainly enjoyed your poetry. Congratulations on your book release and on all the projects that you have coming up. I wish you all the best. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you again. Glad to share with everyone listening.
Awesome,
Bye
awesome. You
now.
have a good evening.
You too.